Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Standard Liege and their very impressive stadium. This is a really nice place to come, actually, and it's been a really nice afternoon, albeit very, very warm. There's not many times that I have considered doing a verdict without a top on. I'm not going to endure you to that. I'm not going to endure me to that. I lack the self-confidence to do that, but it is very, very hard to convey just how warm it is here today and has been all afternoon. Temperatures have been well in excess of 30 degrees. You can probably see from the sweat on my forehead, and I've done no running around as to the state of the weather, and it doesn't make it conducive to particularly good conditions for a game of football. And I think we saw that reflected, particularly in the first half, with some of the tempo of this game. Nonetheless, it has finished here this evening, with a 1-1 draw, and that has seen the curtain fall on Norwich City's tour of Belgium. I think it's been very productive, very two high-level games, and very interesting given that, the level of opponent here was significantly higher because they are more progressed in terms of their pre-season. This is it now for Standard Liege. They go and play Genk next Sunday for Club Bruges, who Norwich played in midweek. They're actually playing tonight in the Belgian Super Cup. So two teams who are in very different stages of their pre-season, and I think you could see that, and it reflected in both of the games. This one was more competitive, I felt, than Wednesday. Where the levels were too high for Norwich on Wednesday, I felt, and particularly in the final third, there was a real cutting edge in terms of what Bruges did. But this was a really interesting game. As I said, I think the heat absorbed a lot of the intensity out of it, and Kenny McLean summed it up really. Even though there were opportunities to progress the ball, Norwich were actually probably playing safer because they wanted to save themselves. They didn't want to then have 2 minutes of chasing the ball. And to be honest, stood here pitch side, I can tell you I don't blame them one bit because it's smoking hot here. It's I could probably fry an egg on my head. That's how hot it is at this moment in time. But this was an interesting game because, unlike Wednesday, Norwich welcomed back a few of their key players. Kenny McLean came back. Grant Hanley came back. No Angus Gunn yet. He's got a slight hand injury. Not anything that anyone thinks is serious or is going to rule him out at the start of the championship campaign, but just serious enough that you don't take any risks. Same with Shane Duffy, same Christian Fashionat. Both of those guys are back at base. Angus has been here in Belgium and has done a few of the trainings. And it's interesting that the club released a video last night, and he was training without gloves, and I think he's had some injections and whatnot. So Archie Mess started in goal. It was back for Jack Stacey, Jakob Sørensen, Grant Hanley, and Kellen Fisher, a left back. And I think he's really interesting and is becoming a really interesting part of pre-season. And I'll talk a little bit more about him in a moment. You then had Sarah, McLean, and Nunez as the midfield three, with Rowe and Sainz either side of Adam Ida. That was kind of the first half 11. And like I said, I actually felt they started brightly. They got the goal after 8 minutes. It was a good strike from Borja Sainz. Adam Ida held the ball up well. He had options either side. A lovely ball through to Borja Sainz. Maybe just a little bit too much on it, but just checked inside and made what was probably a good chance, a great chance to then slot it home. Because I think some players in that position could be quite rash and maybe lack the clarity of thought just to cut inside and provide the finish. But it was a really good finish. And nice to see Adam Ida involved in that again. And I felt, once again, really linked the play quite nicely. It was another positive performance, but much like Norwich generally faded. And I think what we're beginning to see with consistency now is Norwich create a really interesting pattern out, in possession, and it's asymmetrical. You have the left back tucking in to create that back three that we spoke about after Northampton. You get Jack Stacey, who provides that width on the right, and then a left-sided winger basically who provides the width. And Borja Sainz was playing there today, and he's not really that type of player. He wants to drift inside. He wants to get the ball in the half space. And there were times I felt that he was coming inside where Norwich needed width, and it just made everything a little bit too narrow, and probably gave Norwich then a safe route to return to build-up. And that was a reoccurring theme as the half went on, actually. There were opportunities, I felt, to play with limited touches or fewer touches than they were doing, opportunities to play forward and to go and accelerate attacks. And they were often turned down just to go back to build-up. And again, whether that's conducive to the heat, whether that's just where we are in terms of them learning a new style of play and it not quite being in their system yet, because I think you can see there's structure, there's a skeleton there, but I don't think yet there is the confidence or the intuition there. I'm not quite sure that it's fully ingrained in their minds, kind of, how quickly they need to move the ball and how progressive they need to be at points. But that probably was the major frustration I think that Johannes Hofturup had, and he was quite animated in the first half, was quite frustrated. There was a lot of gesturing, a lot of pointing, and trying to chaperone players into positions that he felt would be better to get Norwich up the pitch sooner. And we spoke to him post game. I think there's a frustration that they didn't go and score certainly more goals, however many goals, I don't know, in that first half. And there were points where, again, Grant Hanley seemed to have infinite amount of touches. Kenny McLean as well. There were others, of course, but those guys, Nunez as well. I thought Sorensen as well at points just slowed the game down a little bit, and there were definitely opportunities to progress and go and play and create overloads at the higher end of the pitch, and that probably meant that Norwich didn't quite look as creative as they have done at points, particularly in that Northampton game, because it's all very well and good having the ball and using it and probing, and there are points where you need to do that, as I said, in the build-up phase. But it's also about recognising when to then go and progress that and to go and strangle the game and to try and go and create opportunities. And you have to work for your openings. That's what possession football is about. It's about moving your opponent. It's about opening spaces on the pitch. And they did that at times. There were times where, there would be John Rowe would make a brilliant inward run from out to in that would open up the right flank for Jack Stacey, and the ball just wasn't coming. And likewise, Adam Eder made a couple of really good runs in behind. But even more subtly than that, there were moments where Gabriel Sara wanted the ball on the turn to get Norwich forward and just lacked those type of passes at points to push Norwich into those better and more advanced positions and more progressive positions that would have then enabled them to convert what was pretty comfortable spells of possession with real creativity. And that's how you unlock it, I think, because you have to move the ball quickly. You're patient. When that gap appears, you have to play, and you have to play quickly, and you have to play forward. And that is when the likes of Rowe, Science, Eder, Sarah, Abu Kamara, those type of players, I think, will really come alive. So that, I think, was the frustration for me in the first half. But I get it. Look, the heat is bad. It's bad here today. It's not. It doesn't help what Norwich are trying to do. And if you are playing in this heat, you want the ball because you run less. So I think that was probably an ingredient of what we saw. That said, the goal they scored was through that kind of progression that I spoke about as well. And of course, we have to remember this is still very much a work in progress. I've had 3 weeks under Johannes Hoff-Turup. He's not yet implemented all of those ideas and all of those theories that he has and that he's trying to embed in this Norwich City side yet. You look at, for example, their work out of possession. They've started that this week. I thought their counter press at points in this game was much more impressive and much more advanced than we'd seen. And they were beginning to go with a real structure. They got that a bit wrong on Wednesday. So I think it's clear to see that there's been some work done in that. And I think it's interesting as well, the way that he's kind of set them up to defend so far is they get very, very narrow in a base 4-3-3 and that attacking three and middle three really squeeze in, and it offers the sides to opponents. But in terms of what Liège were able to create, particularly in that first half, was pretty limited. The goal came from a set piece, which I think is a foul the other way on Callum Fisher. It's whipped in. The man gets a run on to the near post and flicks it on, and Archie Mayer has no chance. So again, they're close to appointing a set piece coach. It's the type of little details at the moment that they've not quite worked on, and I think you can see that. But there are green shoots here, and there are moments and structures and skeletons of Johannes Hoff-Turup's style of play, and I think that's really encouraging. The second half, I thought, was descended really into a pre-season game. It was 1-1 at that point. It was comfortable. I thought Norwich looked a bit brighter. I thought they progressed the ball a little bit better. I'm really, really impressed with Brad Hills. I'm sure a lot of you guys have been at home as well watching the 3 games that he's played. I think he's been excellent so far. He is aggressive, and there's a presence about him. He's there was moments where he had to go and win aerial duels, he had to go and win tackles, he had to mop up, and he was really willing to do that. But for me, and I went to watch him play for Accrington against Sutton United in March just to get a look at him, because he'd been getting rave reviews on loan, and it was one maybe that could come in and affect it. It's a big jump that from League Two to the Championship, and there's still no guarantee, even though he's had 3 really good games, I think, in pre-season so far, that he's still going to be able to bridge that gap. I remember being stood in Germany and in Austria speaking about Callum Fisher last year, and you then translate that to how much football he actually got in that season. Not much. So it can be deceptive, and it's still so early, but it's hard not to be impressed by his quality and his poise. And I think actually Norwich have probably looked a better team with him on the pitch, particularly in build-up, but also generally. And he has made a statement. He has made an impact. Now he has to go and try and find some consistency and do it. But at the moment, it feels like, certainly watching these games, that he should be applying a lot of pressure to Grant Hanley and Shane Duffy for that right-sided centre-back spot, because he's been excellent so far. I'm struggling really to think of a foot wrong that he put today. There was one really forced pass that he played towards the end of the game, but Norwich counter-pressed that quite nicely, so it wasn't the end of the world. But against really good opposition as well. It's not like Northampton, where you're playing a League One side with the greatest of respect. He's come out here and, you know, he had a tussle with Musso, who's really highly rated for Club Brugge, young lad, and you know, had 3 duels and won them all against him. He's played some really good players here today against Standard Liege, who's top tier in Belgium, and looked really comfortable. He looks comfortable. He looks confident. He looks assured. And if he can continue that, if he can basically do what he's done in the first 3 games, in the final 3 games, I think he's going to have a real chance of being in that conversation for the starting lineup. And look, there are others as well. Kellen Fisher, and it's really interesting to hear what Johannes Hoff-Torp said at the end of the game about him, in terms of they're probably just trying to find his best position at the moment, because he's a player that they feel can be really important to their build-up play, and it's all about basically finding out where he's best to do that. And it's interesting that might not be at right back, and we saw him at left back today. We've seen him at right back. We've seen him in central midfield, and I think we can all see there's a technical base of a really good footballer there, and he was really impressive last pre-season in terms of the type of performances that he illustrated. Obviously, it's tough then in the right back role to get ahead of Jack Stacey because of the type of player. I think particularly in this system with how aggressive Torup wants to be with him. I think it's going to be very difficult for Kellen Fisher to get in this side as a right back. So. If he can go and fill jobs and do different roles in different places and find areas that he could be quite comfortable in, I think he's a really interesting player. And he was one that I probably had earmarked for a loan, but judging what Torup said at the moment, they want to try and find a place for him in the side. And equally, Liam Gibbs as well. Really, it's small things, isn't it? Seeing an actual player play in their actual position, but it was good. And again, started with real energy. Only limited to half an hour today. It was his first outing. Same for Onel Hernandez. I don't think you can really judge performances off, you know, one half or 130 minutes, because these players have just come back either from injury or from internationals. And so I wouldn't cast a judgment too much either way. But it was good to see Torup recognise that is his position and that is where he wants Liam Gibbs to play. And I thought he injected energy and quality. There was one moment he got caught in possession, really silly pass, or I'm not really sure how he lost the ball, to be honest, but he managed to do it, and again probably bailed out by Hills and Warner as well, who was good, and it's worth mentioning that. But the second half was good again. Norwich playing with some good patterns, but descended really into a pre-season game. Both teams really not pressing with the same intensity as we've seen. A lot of the young players on the pitch, a lot of changes from both sides, and that's the nature of these games, isn't it? But what I would expect to happen now, as we move into the second half of pre-season, Jose Cordoba comes back on Monday. Josh Sargent comes back on Monday. I would expect the left-back situation to really ramp up next week. Obviously, there's Callum Doyle in the frame. I think they'll obviously, you know, spinning a few plates. I could see another one emerging, because that's one that they need to get done pretty quickly. And I think they'd like and hope to get that done before Austria. They're close. That's all Johannes Hoff-Torp would say to a set piece coach. So we'll see how that develops as well this week. They've also got the opening training session on Wednesday, and then the opening Carrow game against Magdeburg next Friday, which is going to be really interesting as well. So I think what we'll see from here is some of those young players. It's a bloated squad that they've brought over to Belgium. That will be sufficiently trimmed. Only those that Johannes Hoff-Torp and Glenn Riddlesholm and Narcis Palash and the coaching team and the football department feel are close to the first team will get taken, I think, for the next 3. And this is kind of halfway through pre-season, isn't it, essentially? Now you've had the Belgium tour. And I think from what they wanted out of this tour, 2 high-level games, getting the squad close-knit in close quarters, getting a lot of young players, a lot of minutes, getting to watch a lot of players in different roles and different positions, I think it's been successful. And look, there is evidently going to be work to do, and you can see it. You can see it when Norwich play, in terms of what I said about that intuition isn't quite there. There's small bits of details that haven't been worked on yet because there's not been enough time, and that will bleed into the new season, I believe. But what Norwich try and do in possession is really interesting and quite fun, actually. And that's quite nice to be saying that after probably the last few years. It is really clear what they try and create. It is really clear what they try and do. So then it's about executing it in a better way than they've done. And that has to be the aim. So, yeah, I think they'll leave Belgium with a lot of encouragement. We've still plenty more to work on. There's green shoots. There's been good stuff, some bad stuff. And yeah, it feels like they're in a decent place in terms of footballing wise, and obviously fitness wise as well. So yeah, I'm going to leave you with that. Hopefully that's okay. We're going to do a podcast on all those various different bits tonight, and just have a look at this stadium. By the way, look at this main stand. Now, I can't believe that this is basically a similar size to Carrow Road. There's the press box there for anyone wondering about the inner circle. It's quite sparse today. I was expecting it to be a little bit fuller, but it was I'd say probably a few thousand in here, not many at all. There's a few in the bottom tier of that stand, a few up there. I think there was a few down here. And then if I turn round, the Norwich fans were sort of up there, just past that fencing. So yeah, that's the ground and whatnot. I do want to show you the pitch out of interest because I'm pitch side. I don't know how well this will come across, but down here you might be able to see quite a few rocks. Now this is the AstroTurf, and if you go onto the pitch, it's quite dry. It looks good, but it's patchy, it's hard, and some of those rocks actually are on the pitch. It's a really weird playing surface actually, and heavy and probably not well watered. And I think that probably contributed a little bit to the type of game that we saw here today. But no, good test. I think Norwich will be pleased. They're flying back tonight. We've got another night here, and then we're going to be up at the crack of dawn tomorrow morning to catch a Eurostar to get back to the UK for the next week in pre-season and pre-season training and open training sessions and games at Carrow Road. And then obviously we'll be out in Austria as well for the game against Hoffenheim. And then it all ends with St. Pauli before the real stuff gets going. So yeah, I've really enjoyed Belgium. It's been great to be here. I hope you've all enjoyed the content as well. There'll be plenty more to come over the next few days and weeks. Thanks to Chips Away for sponsoring us, and we'll see you very soon. I'm off to get into the aircon press room. See you later, all.